Chief. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is regularly scheduled meeting of the South County EMS. We have one member, Matt Russo, that will not be with us tonight. Chief, let's call to order at 6 o'clock and we'll get the ship rolling.
In your meeting packets, the first thing that you kind of meeting, so that you've had a chance to review those.
I motion we approve the minutes as presented.
Gary seconds. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Unanimous, Chief.
Yes, we're still. Second, the first half. Pushed out to like bottom. So I'm happy this thing is coming, and we had one of our trucks broke down. It was mutual aid.
Chief, is it standard the delivery date being 2 years plus?
3 years.
Is that standard now?
3 years, and that's hardly acceptable. So this is kind of why we've shifted away from this custom order 3 years delivery planning towards giving a stock meets all of our specs, that we can get much quicker, right? Anytime possible. So that's why it's a time and cost saving that gives us everything.
It's interesting. I was reading something after the last meeting when you were talking about and it seems that people around the country are noticing that the venture capitalists are purchasing these companies, and next thing you know, the prices are going up, and there's so few manufacturers, all of a sudden you don't have much choice in what you're doing.
I think it's really prevalent with preference and the way we've done things. So, moving on. Any questions, public comment about new vehicles? Moving on, I'm hoping to keep this fairly brief. What we're starting to do is look at fiscal year 27. I am waiting on the spreadsheet with all of the real calculations from the that's being worked on. So when I have that, that's fantastic, but I don't want to jump the gun and start creating concepts. What we have in front of us, we did bring this to the Deerfield Personnel Board last night. Followed up with this in February. Our three different compensation schedules that we could push out, respectively 1, 2, and 3% COLAs. So each existing employee will get a July 1st step raise, and this is what those steps would look like at the respective COLA. One of the issues we're going to encounter this year is that we've had such incredibly huge health insurance premium increases that despite really good raises over the last 2 budgets, they're now taking home less money than so even if I give them their 2.5 step and I give them a 1% increase, it's still 8. So that's, obviously everything in the world is very expensive right now. In the grocery store, I want to try and offset expenses, but the flip side to that, of course, is that department's contribution to the premium is also visible. Some, as far as the other line items in our budget, there's very little effect. And this is because I'm so dramatic last year. So I'm sure I can find some dollars somewhere about hopefully the Cambridge situation and the fiscal better than anticipated. Right now, it's very hard to tell about what is still in the second quarter. So it's important to appreciate what you're getting. But as far as the rest of the payroll budget concerns go, that information is just not clear. So it's really hard to piece together even an estimation. So this is kind of where we stand with what payroll could look like. Most of our employees are step 3 through 6 category, but we have a couple of hires in step. So I'll leave that to Bruce.
Oh, 1 second, Chief. Tim, what do you see as a fiscal coming from you? No. Have you heard anything about next year's insurance?
We don't have any figures. We're like every other town that's involved in this particular insurance group, looking at what options there are. 40% increase this year. I mean, 20% and then 20% halfway through the year. So we are asking the Deerfield Elementary School to limit its budget increase to 2.5% and to include in that the increase in insurance costs. So in previous years, the town has basically paid for the insurance for the elementary school, but now we want them to roll it into their budget. And so we're going to be, like every other town, looking for as much fiscal, conservative budgeting as we can find. I don't know if that answers.
You're asking the schools to put the healthcare in their budget.
Well, the Franklin, the Frontier already does it because it's for town, but for whatever reason, Deerfield never had the elementary school health insurance wrapped into. This is what I've been told anyway, and
he's not the only.
Correct.
Yeah, Deerfield's not the only.
Yeah, so because it's not a regional school, I guess it's they're town employees, and but it's, the two schools are the biggest expenses the town has, and we need to try and tighten our belts.
So, in South County, COLA is governed by what the town of Deerfield
Right. And
makes a recommendation.
we haven't had a recommendation about what the COLA is going to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yes and no. They are separated from the town cost scale. So.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I was just speaking generally because Tom asked generally.
No, I just think it's important. I think it's important that, and if that's so, I would think that the board, or select boards from those three towns would be probably composing a letter to the Board of Oversight with similar recommendations on what Deerfield's saying.
Yep. And, speaking as one individual, I've basically been discussing the fact that our employees pay 35% of their health insurance costs. And for retention and other reasons, we may need to look at that percentage. It's become so expensive that, as you mentioned, these increases have almost made you work for less money. So it's a challenge, and I don't know what we're going to come up with.
So we're in the same situation in Sunderland. We have wanted, and Tom was on the board even when we want to start increasing the town percentage, lowering their percentage, and with these increases, there's not money to make it happen.
Yeah, and we're in the, that just reiterate what's been said down there. We'd love to do more for employees, make it easier for them. And we don't even know how big the insurance increase is going to be, and get to assume whatever we think it's going to be, it's actually going to be bigger based on past experience.
There is some good indication that the trust is coming up with different flavor plans that would allow them to, have deductibles, have, lower cost premiums, but then you don't have as much health coverage that's,
Then our employees are getting worse health care.
Yeah, I mean, they're having the ability to make a decision and sort of gamble with their health, to take a lower plan so that they can increase their take-home pay, which is a consequence of the type of health insurance our country has.
And so we're with the guys are with the Hampshire Red Collaborative?
Right.
Okay.
So essentially, this is a work in progress. This is where we're at. mentioned that Deerfield Finance starts, I think, first of the year, meeting every Monday, so we'll, I'll get it from that, or getting info from you as well. Pretty quick. Okay. So there's a draft, very draft, incredibly draft version of the top of the business plan. One of the things that we have been looking here,
Just by way of warning, when you see iPad guest, you need to ask them to identify themselves, because otherwise you open yourself to being spam bombed. So before you admit everybody, if they're not identifying themselves, then you may have a problem.
You had a problem with that before, Jeff?
Well, I don't know. Can you identify yourself, iPad?
No microphone.
Yeah, I would bounce them out if they want. Yeah, they are muted, and you know they get in and they do these little shenanigans, and then something pops up.
You want to?
Me personally, I'd bounce them if they don't want to identify themselves. We don't know who they are. We don't know what they're up to doing. So that's me. If they want to come back in later and identify themselves, that's, you know.
Basically, the idea. At the next town meeting, we want to use some of our service revenues to start saving for future capital purchases, which is something that South County has not done yet. So this takes a couple of steps. Now, first is piece of our budget that directs the money that is. So the plan that we had all been working towards was to do 3-year ambulance purchase. So if we look at the overview, we have this first column of fiscal year 26 approved. That's what's already going on. So for fiscal year 27, we're expecting some big increases, so we'll have 2 brand new ambulances. So I'm not really looking to put anything into it except for a single medical capital purchase. Fiscal year 20, it goes up to the $115,000, which is just the cost of a new ambulance at 6% increase of this year's cost, which is what they're quoting. Split out over 3 years, and then we see fiscal year 23 that. There's obviously a lot of room for revision to this spreadsheet and there are different methods we should go about splitting up those savings into the account. iPhone guest, if you'd like to identify yourself, I'd be happy to.
I don't know.
Not if they're in the waiting room.
Yep.
So you have to admit them, ask them to identify themselves. If they don't do it quickly, then
iPhone guest, can you go ahead and identify yourself for the board?
Ask him to unmute.
It's Lori McComb.
Okay.
Hi, Lori. Welcome. So this is kind of the idea, again, as this is an overview and to be working document that this board collaborate and come back to be presented for town meeting. Moving on to funding sources, I just made a list of our funding sources. How we anticipate spending from them in the coming years. This just includes handbook, including very much else. Rent paid for vehicles, vehicles. Again, pretty simple. Building costs. Now we do have the rent fund, which can cover a lot of repairs and maintenance with our station itself. So there's not a lot we will be due for based off of the anticipated lifespan of the generator. So we can of course have that evaluated and that could be extended. So it's like to survive beyond that expectation. So it's an excellent working order. So, but that's in there. Looking at equipment, all of our light packs, we're going to be looking at replacing third and fourth. So that's going to be in the stock. Also, those models won't exist. So currently, so equipment wise, one pretty good place. I do have a wish list of things I'd like to do for us. But really, that's it. So, current docs, that's when they went in service, their lifespan, when we anticipate the replacement, how much they cost, and how much they. So that's there for you. Again, some of these anticipated expirations can be revised. So basically, I just wanted to present the board with this to offer it as an overview and ask that you each take a look at it and give it some consideration about how you feel the best way to tackle segment. You know, this is so, some years you may not split this fully on
when we first moved into the station, and this has to go to Derek of the question, but, there was and I wish Matt was here, because he was a big proponent of this, is that they, Matt in particular asked every year if the, the town is charging enough rent to cover these expenses, because the rent was supposed to be going into a fund to fund a lot of these things. So I guess I would ask Tim and Trevor if the, and I'm just putting on my Matt Russo's hat right now because he's not here, if the town is charging enough to South County to cover anticipated expenses.
So
Couple of things. So I don't know if the town building advisory committee, we have a town building advisory committee, they have been doing valuation of all of our buildings, and trying to build out a long-term capital plan for them. I don't know if they have visited, or South County EMS is on that. It must be on the list. I just don't know if they've done that yet, but I think their plan is to kind of figure out, okay, when does a typical roof need to get done, and kind of build up all of that, so that they could, they could come up with a capital plan. They've been working on that for a while, and I think that this year they're planning on filling that out a bit more. So then we could kind of evaluate kind of what the costs are, and are we charging enough rent? I mean, I think it's certainly building up because we haven't used it, I don't think, for anything yet. Most of the stuff we've done has been capital. I don't think we spent any money from that, so it's certainly building up. We've got quite a bit in there. I could get the number for you. But yeah, so I think we should, make sure if it's not on the list of the town building advisory committee to do that.
So I would recommend that the chief works with your study group,
Yeah,
right? And he can give that to you.
yeah, that'd be great. Oh, good.
So what is the process for you wanting to use some of the money that's in that rent fund? You go to Deerfield and say, the building, is leaking and we need to fix this? Or do you come to the boo and say, I'm spending this money?
The rent stabilization account has about 144,656 in it right now. Just to give you a background on that.
Oh, Tim, at the Deerfield, whoever is in charge of your facilities, do they visit, look at the?
Yes, yeah, that's what they've been doing is kind of, yeah, walking around and, you know, going through the full list with the chiefs or, you know, highway chief or something like that. And they've got a committee together. I don't know if Matt's on that. I almost think Matt's on that.
The committee has been sort of reshaped.
Yes,
So, you know, now it has the directors like the police chief. You're supposed to be on it.
yeah, DPW head,
DPW, you know, and
finance committee
finance-
chair.
Finance Committee Chair Julie Chalfant, and then Christopher Dunn, Town
Yeah.
Administrator, and you know, they're basically looking to develop a 20-year plan, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and actually, we've been talking about putting in various ways to do this for each building, putting in a certain amount of money. If it doesn't get used, it gets rolled over. If it does get used, then it gets replenished. But I don't know how that would, with the rent situation for SCEMS, it's a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Right.
It is, yep,
Right.
specifically for that.
Does anybody on the board have?
Just one question. I know you can talk to Pete Payne about the Whately offices, the garage space, and the status of that.
So, our building is wonderful, but small. So, one of the issues we have, town of Whately, has a lot of garage space. They're putting that
Mm.
absolutely. Well, this, well, they, all kinds of possible. I reached out. But basically, they've sent me back, he sent me back a document, which is. So that was. So, we'll see if they come back.
You might wanna take these bigger ambulances over there and make sure they'll fit into the doors.
Yeah, so that's.
Because that was an issue in the beginning when they were first talking about moving in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thought I have, in space, is that back of the town office is under consideration, the earliest possible state of being used, move the police station into that location. There are 3 bays, I believe, at the back there. Likely only need 2. But, I mean, again, this is not imminent, but it's a plan that's been floated.
So that's good to know, because, yeah. Wow.
Yeah, this is nothing definitive, sure, just a thought at the moment, but that the inside space is also unused, and that would be a good use for it.
Funny how we go full circle. Right, Tom?
Did you, look at our call outside our mutual aid calls and stuff? Are we still tracking the same or?
Right.
One way or the other.
Now, Russo had requested yesterday.
So, we just went through what, the second year of, an established when we do detailed work did that work, and did you see any changes coming forward next year with that? Well, mean details of like, we put in the wages, so established a wage, for the paramedics, EMTs that man the ambulance, and there's a fee for the ambulance to be stationed at a.
Okay, like an actual concert.
Yeah, yeah. So how did that work out did you foresee, did you have trouble scheduling that or managing it, or?
Some of them, yes, some of them shorter details, like Europe or football coverage or um, free house, cyclocross, here, marathon, all of them. Very, kind of, thick, plus hours. Separate table. Comes out of our account, doesn't come from our account. Payroll. Doesn't. Doesn't. There's always. That's been going for.
So here I am again. I bring up this mutual aid, even though it's not really mutual aid, but in regards to the amount of time that our ambulance is going out. Now, you just came to the 3 towns and asked for money for a new ambulance, $400,000. So you don't have the figures for how many times we've gone out of town, but it's a lot. And the other towns that we're covering on mutual aid are not giving us any type of a stipend towards the new ambulance or, the wear and tear. And this is just wrong. We're dishing out, the taxpayers of these 3 towns down here are subsidizing Hatfield, Conway, Greenfield mostly. They're running for the medic runs up to the hill towns too, which I think is ludicrous. But in 12 months, November to November, you guys covered 32% of Hatfield's calls, which is about 130 calls that you ran down there. You're talking about the wear and tear on the ambulance and the money you're getting out of each run is not covering the wear and tear on that ambulance. Why are we running down there constantly? Why are we, Conway didn't want to join when South County became a new unit because they had enough people, they said. So now they don't, because 9 times out of 10, when Conway gets a call during the day, South County is going up there not as a medic unit, as primary, because they'll tone them 3 or 4 times, boom. I asked the board, why is Deerfield, Sunderland, and Whately giving all of this to our neighboring towns? Why are we not going after them for a stipend? Any answers to that, guys or girl?
It's kind of a double edged. So we've looked at some of the we can do an audit of it. Our board. But we do look at this overall. Got
No, there's no way that the billing,
But we have to, so when
Okay,
when
Tom,
the chief
all
is
right,
talking,
go ahead.
then when he finishes, we'll get right back to you, okay?
so the cost we will cover far greater. Certain what we have.
Mhm.
So basically, chief is, the board has asked the chief to provide us figures for just what you're asking. So to look at what we're, getting back and what the cost is to run the ambulance. And in addition, it's interesting when you say it about stipends. So Sunderland, a number of years ago, back two of their town managers ago, Amherst decided, because they were doing some calls in Sunderland, they were our advanced life, that they told Sunderland we're going to have to pay them $80,000. And they had told, I believe, Hadley at the time, that Hadley needed to pay them just a stipend of $120,000 a year. And that's when we started looking at what other options that we have available. So that's something that we have to look at, because specifically when a neighboring town to the south made their decision, they looked at 4 or 5 different options, and cost was definitely not the level of care, I don't think, but the cost was a huge impact on making the decision. So, and if we go back to when we first formed South County, Conway was absolutely part of the group that was asked to talk with our initial.
Right.
Actually, Hatfield was part of the group on the initial discussion, right there. And Leverett was another town. So we actually cast a pretty wide net at that time. And some of these towns chose not to join, but I think they're coming into the same problems that we are with.
Right. So as far as, yes, you're getting extra revenue from these towns when you run to Hatfield, when you run to Conway, even if it's, if it's Medic or not, and you are running to Leverett and Shutesbury periodically. But that's not covering that $400,000 for this new ambulance in any way, shape, or form. It may be covering your cost of your payroll and your fuel, but it's not covering the wear and tear. I don't know how much it costs per mile and what the average life is on these things now. If it was covering all of that, you wouldn't have just come to each town and asked for an extra $400,000. You would have had it in your budget from all of the billing of all of these calls that you've been running. Now, you talked about Hatfield's got a problem overnight. Sunday during the day, our ambulance went to Hatfield 4 times during the day. So it's not a night thing. They went to Greenfield, and this is just what I'm hearing when I'm in my house. I'm not in the house all the time. They went to Greenfield 4 times yesterday, including back-to-back, 2 different calls. So again, we're down here with no coverage. So all of the taxpayers in these 3 towns that are giving you a big bunch of money every year are going to have to wait for Northampton to come up. And I know that they're still coming up because I saw them at the Hot L recently, because obviously both our rigs were out again. So sorry, but I can't believe that covering these other towns is a big money maker for us, or we wouldn't be paying the 3 towns here. Our taxes would not be having to subsidize everything over at South County.
So Fred, sorry.
That's okay.
We're going to get numbers on this. We'll find out what percentage of the budget is coming from these ancillary calls. There's a unit cost for employing somebody, and we can get all sorts of data about, okay, if 30% of the revenue is coming from these kinds of calls, then 30% of the maintenance for ambulance 1 can be figured out what that is, and then we can make a valid decision about it. The question becomes, if we don't have that 30% revenue, then we go from 1.6 million in revenue down to 1.2 million in revenue. And then we're looking for, where are we going to make that 400,000 that you just referenced an ambulance from? So it's not an easy thing to just say X, Y, and Z. I know because I used to drive an ambulance that the maintenance costs are not being covered by $480,000 in income. So let's look at the numbers and make an intelligent decision about it. To me, looking at it, it seems that we either pay these people to sit and don't do anything, or they go out and do stuff when they're not doing stuff for us. And most of the time, we don't have 2 ambulances on the road. We have 1 ambulance on the road most of the time. We have an impact shift 5 days a week. So the idea that 2 of our ambulances are always available 24/7 is just not true. We have 1 ambulance available 24/7, and sometimes we have 2 ambulances available.
Okay.
Because we've been using retained earnings, we're going to have an increase in his budget this year to reflect that we
Right.
have to start putting in capital stabilization money into accounts that can't be rated to lower our assessments. But I agree with you. I mean, I'd love to be able to say to whomever we go to, in addition to what we were able to bill, you're going to pay us X.
Right. So I'll give you an example. The city of Keene, New Hampshire, their taxpayers are paying a good chunk of money for the fire and ambulance coverage. And every town around them that they cover has to pay. And if it's for whatever reason out of the norm, like if, you know, if we're going to go to Chesterfield for some reason, then there is an additional fee over and above that the town is billed. So,
Yeah, no, that's
Like-
probably
like,
true.
again,
New
you know.
Hampshire's a different animal than,
well, no, it's.
they don't have an income tax. They have huge, high real estate taxes.
Right. But it's the same.
You're lucky you
what
don't
I'm
live in
saying-
Winchester.
What
'cause
I'm
you'd be
saying,
paying
Tim,
3 times
is
what you're
that,
paying here.
you know, they're getting money out of each town to provide that service, plus the billing of the insurance afterwards.
Yep. And as I say, I'd love to be able to come to an agreement with these towns.
Well,
What,
there's no reason you can't.
what may occur is that they just, I don't know, Hadley, or Hatfield, I don't know which town it would be. Okay, they stop toning us and they start toning Amherst. Yeah, it's shifting the burden, but it's hurting us because we don't get any money at that point.
Right.
One of the things that also so you know, Tim just came up with a product that we're paying employees right now to sit around. Absolutely. But I'm paying for
I think as I look at it too, it is a concern. You want to get the data and figure out what's right. I liken it a lot to school choice, in that, you have this expense already. So you might as well get some revenue from it, and you can't always, it's not an even correlation. You do want to make sure you're getting covered, but there is some times where you're not going to get coverage, and there's some times where you're going to get that revenue. And if you don't have, like if we did no school choice, sure, we could kind of slim down everything, but you lose a lot of the benefits of having, all of those students and all of that activity and that money. So we would lose revenue if we didn't visit the other towns. So it's a hard number to, you can't, it's not completely black and white. It's going to be some gray area, but it does need to be a balance, and it would be nice to evaluate, whether these other communities, I know Conway just authorized a new ambulance last week or so, and so they're moving ahead with that. But it would be nice to, it would be nice to evaluate if if we're going to Greenfield all the time, can they also help subsidize if they're looking at not, I don't know what they pay, and I don't know the whole structure, but it would be nice if they could support us some in that, recognizing that we're there an average of 30% of the time for them, kind of thing. So
And
it does. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Always come.
Mm-hmm.
But
yay, Sunderland.
Uh,
Usually at my house, no.
the frustration is that if you're a member of one of the three communities that support South Common, right? You say, well, people just sit around not doing anything. I choose, the town has choose, the residents have chose to pay for that. We paid that so that we tell we have an 7 minute, 30-second, 8 minutes response, right? Well, if the ambulances in this, I think I'm paraphrasing what you're saying. If the ambulance is in Hatfield and someone's needed up where Carolyn
Mm-hmm.
lives up,
Old Albany.
yeah,
Vermont.
Vermont. But when you look at her, or it looked at my up in North Sunderland, my response to get somebody from Northampton, it's going to take a half an hour. It's going to take a half an hour from, well, I paid for 7 minutes and 30 seconds response time. I want that ambulance available for the residents of our community. And if I'm telling a resident who's paid for 7 minutes and 30 seconds that, oh, I'm sorry, you can't have it because our ambulance is in some other community, how can I look at that person straight in the eye and say, you should continue to pay the taxes when someone else isn't contributing to that?
So,
That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
yeah, I mean, I think we all agree that in a perfect world, the one ambulance that's always available would be available when you needed it. But let's just take an example. Okay, let's say somebody at Woolman Hill has a heart attack. Our ambulance goes there. Meanwhile, somebody on Old Albany Road or Lower Road or Upper Road has an aneurysm, has a stroke. We got one ambulance. Who's going to go help that other person while we're servicing the person who's paying for this?
Well, in that case.
So if you're saying that we should not go to these other towns because that's going to take it away from us, I'm saying most of the time when our one ambulance goes out on a call, the rest of us are not covered unless somebody else comes from a different community.
Well, if nothing else, Tim, it's within your community that's paying every year out of their taxes to cover it.
You still need it.
Too, when a neighboring town makes the decision not to staff 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., whatever that shift is, they make that conscious tax-saving decision not to staff.
Right.
Those are the people that I would like to see something different done with.
Mhm.
The every once in a while, we gotta go into Leverett, every once in a while, we gotta go, into Amherst, and those I don't have a problem with, because that is mutual, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna come help us, we're gonna go help them. The town that chooses not to staff to save money on taxes,
Mhm.
whatever their reason is, they can't find personnel, I don't care. They're not able to help us because they're not staffed.
Right.
Those are the bigger issue to me,
Sure.
not the one-off going to Leverett, going, somewhere occasionally.
Yeah.
Because I
it's
do
trying to
consider it
save money and
mutual.
yeah, I agree.
When someone else is trying to save money, because why don't we just decide not to staff 11 to 7? Save
Yeah.
Sunderland, Deerfield, Whately some tax money. We're not gonna staff and have people, that's not reasonable, and it's not reasonable what some of these other towns did, expecting
Other
coverage.
people to take it.
That's my bigger
Exactly.
concern.
Yeah, that's
Yep,
what,
yes.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that's why we need to say, what is the percentage of calls like we're talking about?
Yeah.
What is the percentage of money? And if we decide as
Cherry pick when
Yeah.
we come up with that number.
no, that's fine. I'm just saying, in order to,
If the data,
30% is, that includes the occasionals,
Yeah.
however, all these occasional
Yeah.
mutual
Right.
ones.
right,
We don't want to, or at
But-
least I should not say we.
Yeah.
Crystal doesn't care to address those because
that happens.
those are so minor in the grand scheme of it.
right.
It's the fact that the town that chooses not to staff 11 to 7, they can never do anything mutual for us because they don't have anything
Right.
on.
Right.
Right.
If we're busy 11 to 7 doing something and we need a second ambulance, they can't help us.
Right.
Right, you're gonna get
Until we
Greenfield, you're gonna
evaluate.
get Amherst, you're gonna get Northampton.
Yeah.
They're,
Yeah, I
they're
see.
calling it, when they tone it out, they're calling it mutual aid, and it really isn't. Mutual,
I-
mutual aid is
I
reciprocal.
guess
and
we all
Hatfield-
agree that there is a problem with the
Yeah.
way that ambulance service is delivered. And my biggest question is, how much percentage of our budget is dependent on that revenue? If we make the decision as a town, as a three-town community, to say, okay, we're gonna lay off 3 ambulance people. We're gonna downsize the service, and we're only gonna take care of our people, then our budget is gonna go down, and we're gonna have lower taxes on the community. Is that what we want to do? I'm perfectly happy to do that if that's what everyone else thinks we should do, because we're going to save on insurance costs, et cetera. But we need the data to look at that and make those decisions. And so I think that that's something we should track very rigorously.
Or reverse.
Right.
So I think if you look at that data and you find that a majority of the time we're coming to a certain town because they haven't staffed and we can't get mutual aid, I think that's when the leaders kind of decide like, hey, we should have a discussion with their select boards and say, look, if you're doing this and because you can't afford it, you can't get service, we can cover, but we just need some extra help to do that. We're here for you. We'll be able to do that. So it's just, yeah, it's finding out that data, like you said, if it's one-offs here and there, not a big deal, but if it's a pattern because of deciding to limit for one reason or another, what you want to service for your community, and we find where we end up
Right.
having to do that, then that's the discussion. So it's really that data to find out when it's happening and where.
Don't forget also that as mutual aid called into one of our communities, we lose money. Because so if the ambulance has gone someplace else, it's another community. And we have to call an ambulance up into our.
We don't get that revenue.
Sure.
Well, you're getting the revenue from the call that you're on and.
Hopefully.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's why I keep coming back to, we have one ambulance on. So anytime we need more than one ambulance in our 3 communities, we're relying on somebody to come from another town. I think that in the abstract, it's easy to suggest that we have all this resource that we don't really have. But I agree with Crystal. If some town has made a decision that they're not going to staff from 11 to 7 overnight, then maybe we need to go to that town. Let's come up with a plan that
Mhm.
says, this is how we're going to approach
Well,
this.
that's what I was gonna say. About the finances, is that I think we're in agreement, we want the other towns to pitch in somehow.
Right.
We've been talking about this since I've been on this board and well before. I think we need to start moving on putting together a plan, what we want to do. Do we want it to be an apron charge? Do we want it to be an annual blanket
Exactly.
charge?
Yep.
Which town? And then start moving on the political front of
Right.
going, and it's not easy going to a select board of a town that's been paying nothing and saying, now you're gonna pay. It's like when
Right.
the airline started charging for baggage, and people were in uproar because we never paid for this before.
Right.
Yeah, but if you don't start having a conversation.
Right, oh, yeah.
They're gonna
Right.
think,
Well,
well,
there-
we're getting a free ride.
But I think, if I can just say, I think as a board, we need to decide what form that payment, how do we want it structured?
Right.
Do we want it as, a per call apron charge, or do we want it as a lump?
Chief, one second, Greg. So Chief, do we structure, how is the billing handled for a call to one of our neighboring towns?
It's no different than.
So we submit the insurance and,
The individual's bill.
Yep.
Now we're talking about billing the town in addition to the individual.
and so what happens if there's non-payment? Is it different than if it's a non-payment within?
No, same in every aspect. So we outsource all of our billing. We go out, we'll call, the transfer to the hospital. What happens is, our billing vendor, bills their insurance, and they get a reimbursement. And that can vary substantially based off of what coverage. Right? Medicare, they're fixed fees. If they have paid, they're fixed fees, they're much lower. They have private health insurance, which is much, which in essence subsidizes health insurance. Right? Now, depending on the scenario from there, there's balance. So this is the part that, I think makes most of us uncomfortable. Nobody really wants to go after people for money on insurance, but we do in some instances. I will not go after somebody whose only health insurance is Medicare or Medicaid beyond that reimbursement. We don't see that in this part. It's almost always there's secondary or there's some other plan associated with it we almost never see. The last time this information was asked for, the papers from Hatfield were fully recycled. So they do, and that's good. Does the town pay? No, that's a different discussion. But just as far as billing is concerned, it's identical every.
But
Thank you,
I
Kevin.
think the town paying is the issue we have to address.
Right.
That the individual billing, as you say, is the same whether it's in our three towns or outside. But we need, as a revenue source, to address reimbursement by the towns that we are serving. And I mean, we have not, and we can decide we're gonna keep going the way we are. That's fine, but I think as a board, we need to make that policy decision. Are we going to make a serious effort to get some form of compensation from the towns, not talking about the individuals?
So I have been in discussion with Chief Flaherty. He knows it's coming. We have been back and forth. Been telling him for the last several months is that we take this up as a board. Has been brought to the board. Agreed.
I just think we need to fish or cut bait. We need to do something about it instead of, we've been talking about it for years.
So Fred,
Yep.
I would ask maybe we could ask the chief to bring us a proposal at our next meeting.
Or a menu of proposals in here, because, we're talking about the level of money we're talking about. If it gets too high, the other towns are gonna say, we're not interested, we're not gonna pay you a thing. We stop sending, for lack of a better term, mutual aid calls there, and we lose that revenue, which we don't wanna do either. So we need to find a level that works for everybody.
Right, but it
Be
doesn't
fair.
to work for everybody. I think that's
Right.
how I look at, it has to work for and again, for lack of a better word, where this isn't a mutual experience. Right? We're not gonna go to Hatfield and say, we want $12.37 for you because we did one call there last year. We want to address it only with that
I mean,
very
we
few.
can structure it by saying, essentially, you get 25 calls for, 2 calls a month free. Or, to 10, or 1 call a month, or whatever. I mean,
But,
no, I mean.
It'll be fine.
and-
Let's make a deal.
I think you're, but
Yeah.
using Crystal's example before, right?
Yeah.
And it's, if a community says that we're not gonna staff between 11 and 7,
Mhm.
then we should take, then it says, okay, well, we are, there's a value to that.
That's a
There's-
30-year
right.
budget right there, if they're not gonna
Right.
do it,
There's
eight
value,
hours.
there's a value, because we are staff,
Mhm.
so there's a value to
Right.
that. So, and I think that's what you're saying, right?
Right.
I'm saying it's a complicated situation where we have to consider the other towns' positions as well. And is it worth, what
Right, because if. we
what
don't-
level of service do they want to provide to their citizens?
Right.
Do they want 11 to 7 coverage? Clearly, they don't want to provide it themselves. What
Right,
are they
so-
willing to pay for it?
You could come up with all kinds of different metrics and say, okay, Hatfield, let's just use Hatfield. If we go to a call between 11 and 7, there's a $400 apron fee or whatever the fee is. In other words, you're going to pay us and we're going to collect the billing. And if you don't want our service, don't tone us. Then it's a decision they've made to whether they're going to protect their citizens or not, or rely on some other town that's got more money to come in and take care of their
Then
citizens.
it's the billing.
I know we do. That's what I'm saying. We
Well,
have to,
this
we have to
isn't
look
all
at the
about
overall
That
thing.
Makes it
the time.
complicated. is
And
that
then we have to figure out
they're
what are
not
they
gonna
willing to
just
accept
bill 'em.
where they're not going to take away the other 11 or this is why we need to have actual numbers about how much revenue comes from these outside calls. And yeah, it was, and we need to have it in a digestible form. If it's in a spreadsheet like this, it's not easy to figure out because there's all this other stuff in there. What we need to have is our revenue from taxes, our revenue from billing for our citizens, and then outside revenue.
Yeah, but the variable that we don't know, the unknown, is at what point do the other towns say,
Exactly.
we're not going to pay that much?
Well,
Right.
so
This is how you have to.
Just so you know, if you looked at the study that Hatfield
Yeah.
did a few years ago,
Mhm.
they made the decision based on
Yeah.
four or 5 plans, right?
Mhm.
What was the major number? They knew how much Northampton was gonna charge
Yeah.
to do the service. They knew how much everybody was gonna charge to do the service, right?
Mhm.
And they looked at it and says, well, we're not gonna do that because we're gonna get, somebody else is gonna be providing the
Yeah.
service. We're that somebody, right?
Right.
So, and you can look at what the cost was, Northampton said, what, $400,000 plus your ambulance. And they said, oh, it's too expensive. Well,
Right.
when we first started South County, we looked at how much it was gonna cost.
Mhm.
And it was expensive.
Yeah.
But we decided that we were gonna pay.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I still think that people will pay, but they don't wanna pay to be servicing other people. They wanna know.
I'm gonna move this along.
Good idea.
When I was here, bring Fred and then you, service fee options, is then Hatfield overnight coverage, design, different considerations. I'm happy we're addressing this again. In the meantime, there is that risk that we run to real decrease in the
Yeah, the upside is we run the risk of a real increase in revenue as well.
so take the gamble, we'll look at it. I will talk their chief. Since he's on board, because I think there's hope that he can get it.
Absolutely.
If that's the case, okay.
Well, remember this weekend, as I talked about, it wasn't an overnight thing, it was Sunday day. So they've got something else going on that's obviously deeper. Right, right. Right. Well, apparently somebody must have gone to the Patriots game or something, so. Yeah, and it looks like they're only calling in, they only looked at Northampton, like 5% of those runs where you got 130. So there is a reason for that, obviously, too.
Well, Matt's here to give them.
There you
Yeah.
go.
We're providing time for, is there any other public?
Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, Matthew.
Is there a motion? Well, when are we gonna meet? Can we look to?
Thank you.
Mid to late?
Take the day off.
Tuesdays are good for me.
Yeah, our
Is it good
meetings
for
are
you?
Wednesday.
Tim, are Tuesdays good for you?
I always am available most of the time. Yeah, Tuesday's fine.
Tuesday, chief.
Tuesdays.
You know how to use the technology in Sunderland?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I'm old, so I don't know.
Is there a motion?
I motion we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did you,
I don't know.
you're up here every Monday.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that I have anything to do with that piece of equipment that follows me around when I move and talk.
Are you all set for a